I've got an invisible and barely noticeable signal that I'll give you to change slides, so I'll just go like that. Excellent. Okay. No one will spot it. Don't worry. Thanks very much for asking me back, and it's a real pleasure. It doesn't seem like a year ago I was standing here saying we've launched this really interesting new initiative to find out exactly what it is that councillors do, and then to come back a year later and to be able to report on that. For those of you that know me, you'll probably think that I've actually been standing here talking for a year and that you've just gone away and come back again, and we're not far away from that. So we launched the Councillors Commission to a trumpet of apathy and disinterest and barely concealed contempt when we launched this event. Anthony actually is one of our commissioners, has been working with half a dozen other very good people, well embraced, well settled into local government. What we've been saying is that we're talking to councillors. We want to find out what their experiences are. We want to find out what local democracy, local government means to them and the contribution that they make. So many inquiries and so many pieces of research start off with a set question that researchers want to know the answer to. And I understand why we do that. We took a different tactic and we decided not to have a research question, not to have key questions, but just simply to listen to what councillors wanted to tell us. And to be quite honest with you, I'd recommend this. I'll never get another paper published in another academic journal ever. I realise that when I say. Experimenting with that, not having research questions, has been a very enlightening and quite a refreshing process. And I would argue we found more from that than trying to channel what members wanted to tell us into questions that we wanted to ask. So we had this Councillors Commission. I quite like this symbol, this image here, of Atlas carrying the woe of the world on his shoulders. Because I used to be a councillor, I'm not anymore, and that was my choice, not the electorate's, and that's quite a good thing to be able to say. Councillors, former councillors will tell you that's a much better way to bow out. I used to go home at night from council meetings and group meetings and feel very much like that the weight of the world was bearing down. And I must say, I'll just say one thing about something Anthony said. I maintain the view that the real decisions in local government are made in the secrecy and privacy of the political party group meeting. That's the key body. We know that. I don't think I'm giving any secrets away. And that's one of the fundamental things I think that has to change. And I don't, unfortunately, yet see any evidence of that. But councillors are dealing locally, and where I do agree with Anthony is this idea that what happens on the street corner isn't just generating on the street corner. It's responses to Europeanisation, to internationalisation, to urban processes, to austerity. All of these things that are bearing down on our elected members. And one of the key things that we found is that actually councillors now are spending much more of their time in focusing beyond the council. Now it's almost become commonplace for government and almost everybody to say to councillors, you've got to get out of the town hall, you've got to get away from that, you've got to start speaking to communities, you've got to start speaking to other organisations. And what we're finding is that's exactly what they were doing. And they're doing it on a number of levels. One at a very broad strategic level, and one, as you would expect, at a much more ward or county division, community-based level. But there's one thing that's absolutely unique. Sorry, there are two things that are unique. Amongst the unique things about Kenny, for those of you who know the Monty Python sketch, No One Expects the Spanish Inquisition, will know where I'm going with this. One of the unique things about being a councillor is the proximity that they have to the communities that they govern and represent. They don't disappear down to Westminster for a week at a time. They don't go over to Brussels for months at a time. They are rooted, living, working, breathing, trying to socialise within the communities that they govern, and they experience the effects of the very decisions they make in a way that politicians operating at other levels don't. But one of the things they need to do is to use that knowledge of the locality to attempt to shape all of these other bodies that impact on what communities do, all of these quangos, all these public bodies, all of these private bodies, which operate in what us academics call governance networks, which I like to sort of summarise as that broken egg, that framework that's been broken, that's fragmented, decisions made in different places by different bodies that lack another unique element of the elected councillor, and that is the mandate that we all give them to act. All of these other organisations councillors operate with don't have that mandate. It's a very special but also very fragile thing. But it gives them leverage to start to put Humpty together again, because if councillors don't and communities don't, nobody will. And what I mean by that is to reshape and reform the decisions that these organisations beyond a democratic framework are taking, many of which extend beyond the size of any one given council. We're talking about very powerful organisations, and if our elected representatives locally don't hold them to account, you can bet your bottom dollar no one will. So this is also about joining up the networks. Councillors as network managers, if you like. People that draw on where there are different organisations, different bodies, different collectives, different groups of people doing different things. I quite like this image. I don't know if you can see these very well. That's the sort of typical image of party politics. There's a bit of a punch-up going on. It's probably a party conference or the end of a council meeting or something. Then you have your three political parties in the middle. And I like to think as the person on the end, the calm, serene person, is an independent who's sort of overseeing all of this, political party conflict that's going on. But whatever your political views, joining up those networks are increasingly becoming part of what our councillors have to do. It's also a 24-hour day job. As a former elected member, I well remember the phone ringing about 4 o'clock on Christmas afternoon to be told that the lifts in the local tower block had broken down. Now, if you want to, my response was, I'll be round with a bag of tools. But if you want to travel in the lift that I fixed, then good luck to you. But it's that ability of the individual, of the community, to always find their member. The ease of access. There is nowhere nowadays to hide, and we've heard from some of the speakers already, and particularly thinking about what you were saying about the idea of using the internet and other sorts of spaces where councillors now can be more and more readily accessible, and they recognise them by and large. Now, I am talking about 18,000 individuals across England, so generalising is always going to be somewhat problematic. So proximity, very, very close to the people they represent, that comes with sort of incursions, if you like, into the other facets of councillors' lives, but that's part of the work. There is always the A-team councillor. I'm not trying to promote too romantic a version here, and I don't mean A as in the best, but I don't know if you remember that old sort of 1980s television programme, The A-Team, which started off with, if you can find them, maybe you too can use the A-Team. Well, there are councils like that. I think we should be honest about that. If you can find them, maybe they will take something up for you, maybe they won't. I like this image because obviously what councillors also tell us is that working with their community is absolutely vital. And I will give sort of credit to a website called Glum Councillors, where I sort of it's not one I set. I can't take credit for it. I sort of mined some of these pictures from. This is councillors in what I call their natural habitat, looking miserable and pointing at stuff. So this lady up here is saying, this 65-year-old lady, this is the only toilet she's got. I think there's... this lady must have stood in some quick-setting cement or something while she was pointing out the pothole. My absolute favourite, some of you may or may not know this chap. Here's Robin Wales. It's a Scotsman with the surname Wales, standing behind the English flag on St George's Day. Now, who says we don't have a United Kingdom? There you are, summed up in one wonderful photo. But this idea of it just enhances this sense of proximity. Yes, it's very easy to mock councillors, and you should look at that website. There are thousands of these sorts of photos. Councillors crouching down, pointing at holes and things. It's wonderful. And I did use this slide somewhere else a while ago, and this gentleman here said, "Oh, that's me and my wall colleague." So did I look embarrassed? I can tell you. So why do they do it? Why do our councillors do it? Well, I know this might sound old-fashioned, and I know it might sound as though I'm being overly romantic again, but there is a genuine commitment to public service, to a public service ethos, right across the political spectrum. It demonstrates itself in different ways, but our councillors are certainly motivated by a genuine feeling of wanting to do something good and wanting to contribute to their communities and to govern those communities. There's a real acceptance of what I've called democratic spirit, unless the other lot win, in which case, it gets sort of attenuated something. But a real idea that confronting the electorate with different views, different opinions, and letting them decide is a vital part of keeping things healthy. There are sort of other regarding and what you might call self-regarding motivations, and again, I'm not trying to be romantic, but these are things that councillors have told us. There is something about this thing about the status of being a councillor. I think that's something that's crumbled. I think this idea that a councillor is somebody that's important within their area is beginning, it's crumbled, and maybe it's been crumbling over the decades. And I think one of the things that I'm really keen of with the data that we're finding from this commission is to rebuild the status of councillors. There was a time when the local press used to report verbatim the speeches of councillors in council chambers. Now, if I think back on my time as a councillor, and maybe you think back on your time, that actually terrifies me, to think that some of the inane ramblings of some of my colleagues might get reported verbatim. But it just indicates the way in which this chamber is no longer the precious and special thing that it used to be at one time. And what I'm clearly doing is defending representative democracy, and I make no excuses for that. So, how councillors see their roles? They see their roles in various ways, but certainly they are there, with a sort of dual focus, if you like. One on empowering and enhancing the power of local communities, and the other about governing a locality, creating a shared vision, creating a shared agenda, bringing all of those organisations that I spoke to into some sort of agreement about where the community ought to be going. They're also there to promote and defend the interests of their ward. We have to admit we have a territorially based electoral system, and it would be odd if councillors didn't give special attention to that part of an area that elects them to the council, but they're also there to defend and promote and protect and serve the interests of a much broader community as well, that goes in this example right the way across Kirklees, and indeed communities of interest within Kirklees. What do councillors want? The key thing that they have told us all the way through is we want information. Now, I don't know if you again sort of showing my age, I think 60s or 70s television programme, The Prisoner, it's a bit like being a councillor actually, I suppose, feeling like you're a prisoner, could never get off of this village, and at the very beginning he was asked in every episode, or he asked his jailers, what do you want? And they said, information. And he said, well, you won't get it. And their reply was, by hook or by crook we will. And in some cases this is the voice of the councillor. Councillor, what do you want? We want information. Well, you're not going to get it. Well, by hook or by crook we will. And without that source of information, either from the council itself or from all these other organisations I'm talking about, councillors will simply not be able to do the job that we elect them to do. So what are they doing? What are they doing? They're definitely making a positive contribution to the fabric and to the health of democracy. The very basis of democracy on a national level is how strong your local government is. Can you grow democracy from the bottom up? And I think our councillors and those they work with are strengthening the fabric of our overall democracy. You wouldn't think it when you hear central government talk. Some in central government talk as though they've got no idea what local government is or what it's there for at all. But our councillors are certainly contributing to the health of local democracy. They're encouraging and supporting participation in politics. And of course, not only are councillors doing that, but all of those who stand for council are doing that too. All of those candidates. One of the shocking figures about local government in England and it depends on your view, I suppose, but it shocks me, 90% of all councillors in England come from one of the three main political parties. 90%. And that's a stunning penetration of local politics by big national political party machines. Now, you could say, well, the voters have given them that 90%, those seats, they must be happy. Maybe they are, maybe they're not. But they certainly have alternatives. We don't have, however, the sort of success of those alternatives that often exist elsewhere. Smaller organisations, independents, local parties, regional parties, we have less of that. And I would argue that there's some work that could be done in enriching our local democracy, despite the contribution to it that our councillors already make. I'm not going to go through all this because we're running out of a bit of time, but the other thing is, I mean, could you imagine what the local papers would be like if it wasn't for councillors? You know, could you imagine what they would publish? You know, the woman has baby story has resonance if that woman happens to be a councillor. The stories about all sorts of shenanigans, but also the positive stuff that our elected members do as well. So I think our local councillors alone are probably responsible for keeping those local papers that are still going alive. And that is where we are. That's a very quick run through with what the Commission has been looking at and what it's been finding. We're in the process now of writing up our final report. As a result of these sorts of processes, somebody expects a report, so there will be one, and our final report will look a bit like a parliamentary select committee report, but we want to do more than that. We are going to be discussing and agreeing, we being the commissioners, a dissemination process which will be a little bit more detailed than what I've just given you, and hopefully we can run that out for organisations like this. So if you want me to come back and and to talk about very specific issues that we're finding, then we'd be very happy to do that as well. But Anthony is just as well placed to do that as I am. Thank you very much for allowing me to do that, and also I'd like to say thank you to our councillors. You're doing a bang up job.